truck drivers are getting paid through PayPal, US dollars every month for just having this app.
Monetizing their data.
Your personal information for sale.
Google, Facebook, Twitter, etc. have all kinds of data on you.
They're called data brokers, and they're collecting, analyzing, and packaging some of our most sensitive personal information and selling it as a commodity.
Well, I tracked down one of these data guys, and I had some questions. You're in the data business. Hey, what's going on with data? Why are these companies so interested in our data?
I mean, the best way of calling it, it's the new oil. All that information that's flowing out of your phone or out of your computer, all that is monetizable. And we talk about the internet and it's free. No, it's not free. You're the product. It's not free at all. Now, here's the scary part. One of the guys who sells data, who buys my data, he told me that even the VPNs, which is the virtual private networks, which are like you go in and you're secretive and nobody knows who you are, even they sell your information.
But he's not out to steal your data. He's the CEO of a new tech company that is disrupting the data business in a big way. He loves truck drivers, hates big tech censorship, and he believes that it's time that you start profiting from your data.
One time, my car actually broke down, and this trucker went out of his way. He drove me from New Mexico back to LA. I slept in his van. He let me, or in the back thing, he let me sleep there. He was the greatest guy. I've never forgot that. He was like, oh my God, what a great guy. So Google does about $400 billion a year on your data. I got kind of upset, wait, we're just giving this away to these guys? As soon as I launched, they blocked me from advertising. And I've been blocked from YouTube, Google, TikTok, and Facebook. The truth is, I'm in their business. They want all that data. They don't want to give anything away. When they cut me off from advertising, I was like, okay, I'll figure another way to do it. I'm not going to let them stop me.
You intrigue me a lot. You think of companies that sell data. You think of them as being part of the whole censorship, big tech thing. And here you are saying, I'm fighting for the people. I'm with you guys. This is an outrage. You should be able to communicate, and you guys should have a cut of the profits in your data. It's your data.
Do we have to make a profit? We do. And do we want to make a profit? Yeah. But we want you to be as profitable as we are or more.
Truck drivers are getting paid through PayPal, US dollars every month for just having this app.
We collect geolocation data, which means all that information that you're driving is already being collected. It's already been tracking. So my theory is, well, if you're already being tracked, we should track you and you get paid.
Welcome to the Brittany Richardson Experience.
I told you this in our previous talk. You remind me of the guy in The Big Short.
I don't think that they even know what they've made. This is what I'm going to do. I am going to get a bank to make me one.
You two are like twins.
Is he okay looking?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let me just see if I can look it up. Now I have to see what he looks like because it's scaring me.
So Christian Bale is the actor. The character he played was Michael. I can't see it. He's on.
Oh, I'll take him anytime. Thank you.
You got to watch this movie. You're in the real estate. It's he had a way about him that was just this brilliant mind, and the way he talks, you guys could be twins.
Well, the only thing we have, Brittany, in common then are the looks.
No stocks. I want to short the housing market.
You can personally ask my wife if she thinks I'm a genius or not. And I say, so here, you can say genius two ways. One, you can go, oh, I'm a genius. And then your wife can say the same thing and say, you're some genius.
Oh, yeah. It's on how you say it.
There you go. I'm some genius.
Well, you were telling me before the podcast that you wanted an opportunity to thank the truck drivers. And so I wanted to give you a chance to do that. And Also, I wanted to ask you why you care about truck drivers so much. We're not used to that, and that's a really cool thing to see.
The reason I actually like truck drivers, when I was about 12, I actually worked on my first truck. Now it's a vegetable truck, and I love to work. I worked all my life. And I'm from an middle upper class family, but I was always a worker. I paper routes, and then I went into this. I worked on a vegetable truck on Saturdays, and I love working on the truck. I love the guy. His name was Al Denizio. Never forget him. He was the sweetest guy in the whole world. He had an Italian accent.
Mhm.
And then when I went to college, I started hanging out with truckers. I mean, I was like, I was a tennis player at SC, so I hung out with those guys some, and a lot of the athletes. Like I hang out with basketball players. They were my favorite group. My best friend was a basketball player at SC, and I would travel back and forth to see my sister in New Mexico. And I would get in some, when we had the radios, I'd get in some kind of group with the trucks, and I'd stop and we'd eat dinner or eat lunch, or usually dinner. And then one time and they were always great guys to me. And then one time my car actually broke down, and this trucker went out of his way to drive me. I guess I was going to Long Beach, so it's not that far out of his way, but he drove me from New Mexico back to LA. I slept in his van. He let me, or in the back thing, he let me sleep there. He was the greatest guy. I've never forgot that. He was like, oh my God, what a great guy. And I've always I just like these people are realistic people. They're down to earth. I'm a cyclist, so I'm not with the rich guys. Rich people don't usually ride bikes. I mean, it's much more, some of them do, but most of those guys are just middle class guys, and I prefer hanging out with them than the super rich people.
I think it goes back to something you said about country music, and you like the authenticity behind it. You seem like a very down to earth, authentic person.
Oh, I am. There's no doubt about that. Authentic is and clownish.
I was going to say that kind of intrigues me on the data side of things, because you have all these what looks like shady, mysterious companies that are, you hear these headlines of this company got caught selling our data. You're in the data business, so you have some knowledge in this sector, but you don't seem like a big shady type of guy. What's going on with like data? Why are these companies so interested in our data?
Well, it's the best way of calling it, it's the new oil. So all that information that's flowing out of your phone or out of your computer, all that is monetizable. I mean, it's all worth some money. And they're building a profile on you. Now, the profiles, what I realize is, and some people really want privacy, and we'll talk about that, but the profiles aren't really there to hurt you. They're there to build something that they can then advertise to you. Maybe they can sell something to you, and get a little head start on what you like. And then maybe they can sell you on something. So they're not out necessarily to harm you, but when we talk about the internet and it's free, no, it's not free. You're the product. It's not free at all. But that's how they came up with it, to make it free, which is, we'll do advertisements and we'll follow you around and we'll get a bunch of information about you and we'll sell your data.
Google, Facebook, it's like all these free services. I think a lot of people misunderstand. I think people have this idea on these products are free, and then they're outraged that they're taking their information. It's like, well, wait a second. You have to ask yourself, what is the product these companies are selling if you're not paying for the service?
Exactly right. I mean, here's a scary part. And I don't actually know the VPN, so I can't exactly say this is true, but one of the guys who sells data, who buys my data, he's a great guy. And we kind of started this idea together. And he told me that even the VPNs, which is the virtual private networks, which are like you go in and you're secretive and nobody knows who you are, even they sell your information.
Are you kidding? That's incredible.
So, and not all of them, but some of them. And the reason why I know this is because my counterpart at his brokerage company told me, oh, we get this information all the time from a VPN. They make it anonymous, but still, they're selling your data. I mean, it's disgusting. I would never do that. I have another part of the company that we'll be relaunching that's a secure browser. And I got somebody said, "Oh, you're overrating it." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. This browser makes you invisible on the web, stores all the data that you want, what you want to keep, what you don't want to keep, just discards. Nothing is ever left on your computer. So when you log out, it's not like there's a whole bunch of history there. The history's all gone. There was never, because the browser is really not on your computer. Looks like it's on your computer, feels like it's on your computer, but it's not. It's all in the cloud. And so, well, that was the first thing I built. I couldn't figure out how to make any money, so we had to kind of put it aside and figure out how we could do that. But I'm going to bring that back. And that's authentically like, yeah, I don't believe, when I tell you I won't keep your data, I won't keep your data.
That's one thing I like about your company is that you're coming along and giving people, being transparent, saying, hey, these companies are selling your data. Here you are helping them in a way to monetize that data, giving them a cut of the pie and saying, hey, you should know about this. And here's an opportunity.
Yeah. And here's the thing. So I really believe in customers and taking care of people. So I really believe that you should, if I can work it out, that you should get the majority and I should take a minority. And that's what we try and do. And so our plan is either 70, 80% go to the user and 20% goes to us. Whatever we can sell for you. We don't sell financial information. We don't sell anything with PII, where that's personal something information of the
why don't we can we actually touch on that, because there is different types of information that companies sell. So what's the difference between like the PII information and what you guys deal with?
Well, first of all, PII, you're not supposed to sell. It's against the law to sell personal data. I'm not sure if you give permission to somebody, you can give it, but if you don't get permission, if you just get general permission to sell data, the PII is like your name, your address, maybe your medical background, your financials. That's not kosher to do. And our status is we don't do that. We don't sell it. Now we will have a profile that we'll be launching where we pay you for a profile, but the most you get is an email address and then a bunch of questions like, where do you like shopping? But not like, well, where do you bank and how much money do you have? Mm-hmm. That's not necessary. And first of all, I'm here just as I said, almost none of this data is there to harm you, but it's all sellable and they're already selling it. So Google, I think, does like about $400 billion a year on your data. And that's what I got kind of upset. Like, wait, we're just giving this away to these guys? And as soon as I launched Cocoon Mobile, they didn't block me on the website, but they blocked me from advertising on them. It was like 2 hours later. They were like, nope, can't advertise here. And that means YouTube. And I've been blocked from YouTube, Google, TikTok, and Facebook.
Why? Did they give you a reason?
Yeah, because I mean, the truth is, I'm in their business. Instead of, if I get you to switch over to my browser and you start using my browser and you start making money, they lost you as a customer. They don't want me to do that. They want all that data. They don't want to give anything away. It's crazy. It's monopolistic, and it's kind of crazy.
That kind of reminds me of what happened recently with Parler. They were in their space, and it seemed like that was the underlying reason why. Now, that's my speculation, but it almost seemed like that was why they truly got cut off.
Partly because of I'll say the censorship going on in the United States, which, for me, it's not good. I don't believe that's a good thing for our country. But not to get into politics, but that's what happened to Parler was they didn't really, underlying, there was some bad things said on Parler, I assume. But look, they have Khomeini or whatever his name is on Twitter and they haven't banned him.
Mhm.
But they would ban Pollard. I mean, it just makes zero sense. And Pollard learned a very valuable lesson, which is you got to have your own cloud. In other words, you have to have all your own servers. You can't rely on Amazon. And so they got caught, and they got censored, and they got censored by all these big players, Google and Amazon, which is the biggest because it hosts your data most of the time. They got kicked off, and they finally came back. I'm happy to see that they got back because I don't believe that any one company should have these kinds of control on people.
I agree. That it shocked me. As a matter of fact, I was talking to Savvy Schmidt. She's a radio host, and I was on a podcast with her. In the middle of the podcast, I'm playing the more skeptical side. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate. I'm like, it's not like they're going to really just start banning everybody. Maybe they went overboard. And then right as we're talking, Parler goes down.
Yeah,
and
no,
we start getting notifications.
These guys are serious. It's a real, in my opinion, and it's a problem. It's a problem when this country has been based on the freedom of speech. And one of the things that is horrible to me is how these big companies have just kind of taken control. And, they're kind of I don't know if they're in the hip pocket of, people in politics or other way around. But to me, it just feels off. And it's not something I support at all. And when we go to our browser, I might take our browser and put my own cloud in, because I am nervous about these guys that don't like. And look, I think you want to be left and you want to talk about left stuff, you should be able to do that. If you want to be right, you should be able to do that. I mean, you should.
Why else do we have the First Amendment? It's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Aren't we supposed to be able to communicate? I understand they're private platforms, they're privately owned, but they're also kind of a public meeting place, so to speak.
Yeah, no doubt. But I think the better lesson to learn is if you get into that kind of risk and they're in control, take the risk outside. Like for me, when they cut me off from advertising, I was like, okay, I'll figure another way to do it. And we'll survive. And it's cost me a little more money to go find other ways of doing it. But, I'm not going to let them stop me.
You intrigue me a lot with your company
God.
because you think of companies that sell data, you think of them as being part of the whole censorship, big tech thing. And here you are saying, I'm fighting for the people. I'm with you guys. This is an outrage. You should be able to communicate, and we don't want to see that happen. And you guys should have a cut of the profits in your data. It's your data.
Well, the thing is, as I said, I like the idea. I always, when I built office buildings before this, and my theory was always make your customers super happy and they'll stay longer. They may not pay you more rent than anywhere else, but to me, it was like if we got a nice profit off it, and I could really help people, I would. Like there was this one time, this guy came to me, and he was in one of my competitors' buildings, and he had just moved in, and the window broke, and he said, I didn't break the window, but they charged him for it. And he went and had lunch with me, and he said, I want to ask you a question. What would you have done if the window had just broken and I had just told you I didn't break the window and it had to be replaced? What would you have done? I said, I just would have replaced it. Even if you had broken it, I probably wouldn't have charged you. I don't think that's the way to treat people. And then 5 years later, when his lease was up in the other building, he came to me. He said, well, I just liked your style and you seem like a, honest guy that, will take care of us. And he's been a customer for ours for 10 years now.
That reminds me of a story I heard about Sam Walton with Walmart. When they started their returns thing, he was clear that if somebody comes in and says, I want to return a tire, you give them that refund. The employees said, well, what if we don't sell tires? He said, give it to them anyway. We want them as a customer.
I love that. That's great. No, and I truly believe that that's the way you should treat people. And you should treat people all the time. I mean, if you have a different economic background, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, to me, and I do want to say one thing about truckers while we're on here. I think the unsung heroes that were not talked about during this year are the truckers. And the reason why you recognize it, I don't know how many people didn't recognize, but when I went to the store and found out there was no toilet paper, I was like, holy smokes, we need the truckers. We need to get them on the road and get going. And these are the unsung, I mean, yeah, fire and police, but the one group that's not very often talked about are the truckers. And I just think we owe a lot to them, and we undervalue what they do for us every day.
I agree completely. And thank you so much for saying that. We as drivers don't hear that very often, and we really appreciate it. I was one of the ones that got called out in the toilet paper crisis. I remember my manager with a high profile account called me. She's like, we're so behind. Is there any way you can come out and help us? And I said, of course. I said, was it the toilet paper? And she starts laughing. She's like, yeah,
Yeah.
Actually, you don't know how right you are.
It's just, I mean, as I said, I'm much more of a people person than I am. Like, I mean, do we have to make a profit? We do. And do we want to make a profit? Yeah, but we want you to be as profitable as we are or more in your own little way. So if you get 80% or 70% of the cut, I only get 20. And by the way, the 20% that I got to pay all the bills, right? So my cut's even smaller when you get all said and done, because I'm paying all the bills. I don't ask anybody to pay bills. You just get your cut and I'll take care of the rest. And,
yeah, I was gonna tell you, I didn't know how aware of this you were, but in the trucking community, they have, if you're an owner operator, they've got what's called a broker. So you can turn to the broker who has a bunch of loads available for you. The broker gets a fee. They usually take between 30, sometimes 20%. And so it's a 70-30, 80-20 split for the truck driver. So the trucking community is very used to this. It's a very fair rate. And I really appreciate your structure. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about the product specifically? What is this, and how, because truck drivers are getting paid through PayPal, US dollars every month for just having this app. So why don't you tell us about that?
sure,
How it works.
thanks. I appreciate that. So what we do, it's pretty simple. You go to right now we just have Android. We're doing a crowd campaign, by the way, shortly. We're going to be launching it. So anybody who's interested, once again, this is kind of a people's deal. The minimum if I could do less, I would, $100 to get a piece of the action. And if we rock and roll, maybe end up with $5,000 out of it. I don't know. But the way it actually works was I wanted to have as little friction as possible. We collect geolocation data, which means all that information that you're driving is already being collected. So, sometimes you see, hey, 20 minutes to somewhere in your car or 30 minutes, it knows your route. That's because it's already been tracking you. So my theory is, well, if you're already being tracked, we should track you and you get paid. So all you do is you download the app, you make sure you've turned on yes on I want to sell my data. And then you sign up your PayPal account so I can pay you. And I'm hoping that someday I can get a deal with some of the credit card companies so we can pay you back that way. So you don't have to go to PayPal. But you go to PayPal at the end of the month, and I think the minimum is $3. But the truckers that do lots and lots of miles, those are what we call lots of events. And the events happen every 200 or 300 feet. You get an event, and those just kind of multiply up. And then, a trucker, depending on how many miles he does, he can make anywhere from $10 a month to 30. And eventually what's going to happen as we grow and people stay with me, and that's really important, I'll be able to sell that data. Remember, it's not personal data. It's where your truck's going. Sell it again and again and again. And so that money will pile up as I sell. I only take my cut. I never take more. And you'll end up with, maybe it goes from $30 to $60 a month. Maybe it goes to $90 a month. That's almost $1,200 a year.
Oh my God. And they're in the driver. I've been playing with this app and I love it, by the way. And I can attest to that the miles do add up. It's real good. But the truck driver is not having to do anything here, right? This thing's running in the background and they're collecting payment on PayPal after a month.
Right. There's nothing. I love it because it's passive. We don't ask you to take some test or do surveys or any of that stuff. We don't need to do that. So I want to pay you for your data. And now if you start using the browser, so there's a browser built in, we're starting to pay on that. And eventually we'll be paying strongly on that. So now there's 2 ways. And then I've got a couple other things up my sleeve to make it 3 or 4 ways. And so there's 2 ways of doing this. One is we sell the data over and over again for you. And then another way is we add other features that you will use that will sell the data yet again. So
Wow.
we'll get another chunk of data that we can sell somewhere else. For instance, let's say that trucking data, maybe a hospital is interested in that trucking data because you drive in that area. And so they want to know how many trucks are on the road, so on and so forth, what's going to happen. And so we can sell that individually to a hospital or somebody else that wants that data. We can pay you again. So I love the model because it could be literally $100 a month eventually. And that's just, you're not doing anything. You're either browsing the web or you're driving your truck and you don't do anything.
That's incredible. So one thing that we have as drivers, you can get a rewards card, they call it. It loves Flying J. And we earn points every time we fuel. And that gives us dollar equivalent credits to buy things inside. And I can tell you, at least so far from just playing with this thing, it's exceeding my rewards points that I get for fueling at the truck stops. And it's like, this is actually free money. And
it's free.
Incredible.
It's in a sense, it's not, to be honest with your listeners, not totally free because you are selling your data. But as I said, you're already selling your data. You're already giving it away. You're not selling it. You're just giving away to these guys. And they're just going like, oh yeah, look, Brittany's driving her truck and we're making a ton of dough off of that data and she doesn't even know it. I'm like, that's not right, folks. That should not be like that. We should be cutting these people in. I think there should be some new dynamics out there. Look, I like to disrupt the big boys. When I was in the office building industry, I disrupted them and came up with novel ways. We built affordable workforce housing. So in Santa Barbara, one of the big things was there was low income housing because you get it from the government. And then there was the regular price housing, which is god awful expensive. There's no workforce housing. So I came up with a plan which worked. I built 60 workforce houses. So you were now in the middle range and you could afford something. You didn't need government help, but you were making your $60,000, $80,000 a year, and all of a sudden you could live in the city of Santa Barbara. I just wanted this guy as disruptive in a good way.
I think that's great. And I don't know if you've really looked at the law of infinite returns. I know Robert Kiyosaki talks about it a lot, but the concept's pretty simple. And that's you take $1, and if you invest it appropriately, investing can be risky, but if you learn about it, read and get good at this, you can take that $1 and eventually double that $1. At that point, you've got your original $1 back. Now you've got $1 that pretty much came out of thin air, right? And it can be reinvested and you can turn that eventually into a cash flow. And so that's one of the things I think about with this too, is that like, as these extra dollars are coming in, I mean, imagine if you invested in certain things or, earned interest off that money, that could turn into some pretty big returns 20 years down the road.
You just gave me a good idea. But first of all, I have this idea of finding a really good brokerage company that doesn't charge fees, like Robinhood, and making some sort of deal with them so that it's easy to take that chunk of change that you just earned from me, which, as you said, didn't do much for it other than what you're doing today, and then invest it in some stocks or, maybe even real estate. I mean, I would love to have like a truckers fund that we go out and we buy real estate together. And you guys could, know that I'm there for you. I'm an expert in that business as well. And so, what more fun would it be than to take Cocoon money, other maybe money that you've set aside, and go invest it in some real estate in warehouse buildings, for instance. And you guys all know warehouse buildings because you're trucking it. And to me, the best place today to put your money in, maybe residential, but I would say long run trucking warehouses. And I started at Coldwell Banker as a warehouse broker. So I know about warehouses. I built about 500,000 square feet of warehouse So that to me is great. And the reason why it's so great is because, when you go into a warehouse, there's very little change that has to happen. Every 20 or 30 years, you need to change the roof. You need to put a new roof on, and you have to spruce up the office space. That's about it. Put maybe new VAP coolers in or something like that. That's it.
That's true. Your investment is small versus the return that you're going to get from a facility like that.
Yeah. So maybe we'd work on an investment fund for truckers. I hadn't thought of it, but I would love for you guys to put money in. You're making your annual 8-10%. We go to sell it. Now in real estate, it's not like if you invested in Cocoon, the return could be just, phenomenal. You're not going to get that in real estate, but you're going to get a solid 8 or 10% return. And then when we go to sell the building, you'll get another hit and you'll come out making about a 16% on your money. So it's still,
that's incredible.
It's still solid, right? It's better than the bank. And most real estate is pretty safe. You just got to be careful you don't over leverage yourself in the business because you can get yourself in trouble. But if you don't do that and you basically buy stuff for cash, you're not going to lose your money probably. You'll have these downs and then you'll have the swings up and you sell on the swings up.
Definitely. I wanted to get to the real estate too, but how did you get into the data side of things? Like what made you want to get into this?
Stupidity. No, just kidding. Yeah. No, seriously. The thing was, I'm one of these kind of think out of the, I'm a out of the box thinker, and I'm always thinking of things and I go, if we just did this, wouldn't it be easier for everybody? And it's always, a lot of it's about, I'm annoyed by something, and that's how a lot of things get done. Or I have this great idea. And for me, it was when I first turned on my computer, 10, 12 years ago, all these bad things were happening. I was getting viruses and malware and data that I didn't really want on my computer and all types of stuff happening. And I thought, maybe there's a better way of doing this. And so I contacted a software developer, and we built this thing called Cocoon, which is this secure browser. And so I got into it that way, and I could barely turn on my computer when I first started. My son would laugh at me. He goes, "Dad, you have no idea what you're doing." And now I still don't know what I'm doing, but I'm better at what I don't know.
But you got good people.
Yeah, and I understand the business. I know how to grow it, and I love it. I mean, I love help. This is so you could see, I'm in my age group where I like helping people. It's really cool, right? And it's not all about me anymore, and it was never all about me. But if you can, make another person a really good return or extra money, there's a lot of pleasure in that just for me. Like, wow, I did that for people.
I kind of got to the point with investments and business deals and things like that, where it's almost no longer about the money, how much you're going to get out of something. It's more about the win-win, right? It's about the game. It's about finding solutions and helping people and adding value to the marketplace. And there's almost a high that you get from
total high. There's a total high about that. I mean, to me, as I said, I would be sad if this doesn't work because it's difficult business. And I need people who like the product to stay with it, because that's the only way we're going to win. Is I got to have people that I'll be true to my customers, my users, but they got to be true back to me. And it's the only way we will win. But we will win, and we can change the dynamics so that a lot of people get the profit, but not without a core of people that go, I'm hanging with this guy. We're going to make this together. And if you have an extra $100 and you want to invest in our crowdfunding, and I can turn that into $5,000 for you, or we can take that money and put it into an investment like a Robinhood company to buy stock with, I'm thrilled. And I'm looking for deals for my customers. So if I could figure out a way you don't have to pay those fees, right? And they make money some other way, like I make money some other way. I don't ask you for any money. I make it with you. That's, to me, the perfect world. It doesn't always happen that way, but that's what I'd like.
I think that's awesome. I think you're going to find that support in the trucking community. We're very authentic, no nonsense type of people. We've been through a lot of nonsense, and it sounds like you're in the same place. You're an authentic person. And I think you're going to find that a lot of the trucking community is going to rally behind you on
Well,
this.
if we can rally the truckers, I could say, let's do the tech. I would be very interested in setting up a fund that we could go do real estate. My background, just so you know, I've built a couple million square feet of office, industrial. I did some residential, which I didn't really like. And I was very successful in my real estate career. So it gave me this amount of money to go do something that now I have a passion about. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. But there's a lot of things that we could do together. And there's also the charity. So one of the other things we're going to be setting up, and the first charity I'm going to be working with, or one of the first, is the trucking charity. And so I have a passion for truckers and for what they do for us. And I know there's a fund that helps truckers out when they have bad things happen to them. And I think, if you want to donate money, we'll take a portion of our money, we'll donate it too, so that we can help families that are in need because something, happens to them.
I think that's awesome. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
So how did you get into the real estate side of things? Because that's where you started in the business world.
Yeah, no, I started there. So my dad was a shopping center developer back east, and I came to California. I was a tennis player. I came to eventually go to USC. And when I got out, I was looking around, what am I going to do? I could have been a tennis pro, but a teaching pro. I wasn't really good enough to be I tried the pro circuit for a year. I wasn't doing too well. So I decided, well, you better do something else. And I was offered a couple teaching pro jobs, and I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. And so then I got this offer because my dad, he didn't help me get in. I got in on my own for Coldwell Banker, which now is CBRE. So you see those signs, CBRE. That used to be a company called Coldwell Banker. And I was one of their first hires in a new program. And I'm really proud of this. I was just a runner, a pre-sales guy. And I was supposed to call up companies. I forgot for what reason. And what I learned in there was that these people, the corporate office of Coldwell Banker was not talking to the corporate office of like John Deere. And I was like, well, you guys should be talking to each other. And they weren't. They were letting the local guys talk to the local guys. But I was like, well, that's kind of dumb. So I actually came up with a program which they adopted, and I was only there for like 3 or 4 months, and they adopted a corporate program. And it's just because I said, well, that's a dumb thing that you aren't talking to the corporate guys. You should be talking to them. So I got into real estate. I was a broker. My claim to fame is I worked for Tom Selleck's dad, the movie star guy in Blue Bloods.
Hey, yep.
I worked for his dad. I knew Tom not very well. I knew his brother, Dan. We went to school together. I worked for Bob. He was a great coach. And then I left the brokerage business and got into real estate business. And this other real estate developer said, I'll tell you what, you get no salary, because he said all these guys come and get salaries, they don't do anything. So I'll give you a desk, I'll give you a chair, you go out and find your own real estate deals, I'll help you with getting the money, and we'll do some stuff together. I went and did that, and I built my first R&D or office building here in Santa Barbara, kept it, I still own it, and then started building more office building. At one point, we were the largest developer, which isn't saying much in Santa Barbara, and I was well liked because I did things for the community. I was on boards, and I saved open space land, which I didn't think should be developed. I thought that should be stayed as open space. I figured devise ways to do that. And I was very successful in my real estate career, and then decided, well, I'm kind of bored with that. Let's do something else.
I was going to ask you about the housing situation, especially in California right now, because you have so many people moving to Texas, and I think Los Angeles specifically has had a lot of issue with the housing market tanking. What's your take on the situation in California as a whole, and what's your situation with the real estate market as a whole? Because some are saying real estate in general is in a bubble, but then you have some of these other places that are kind of having a crash.
So let me say this, there's been the up that's really happened over the last few years is low interest rates. That's helped a lot overall. And prices began after 2008, they just started rising naturally some. And you can expect in your house that it will go up an average of about 3% a year. Sometimes it'll go up higher. Like right now, there is a bubble in California, but the bubble is caused by the unrest in the cities. And so the more unrest in the city, well, it's actually two factors. One is the unrest, and the other is this virtual. Like you and I are virtual now. You can have all these meetings. And so people are realizing, well, I don't have to live in this city anymore. I don't have to go to the office. I could work from home. And so a lot of people are saying, well, why am I living in the most expensive place in California? Why don't I move to Texas? And so Texas is receiving, and that means their value is going up. In my area, it's gone up incredibly high because of people on the unrest and people wanting to get out of cities. And so that's been that in the virtual, where you could go virtual in the workforce. And like I heard today that I think it's some of the bigger guys like Google, Facebook, they're going to have 3 days, 2 days, 3 days at the office and 2 days at home. So it allows them to shrink, right? So if it was me, I wouldn't go buy more office buildings. I'd go buy, because there's going to be a shrinkage that's going to happen because the office buildings are going to go down. So as to your real estate, it just kind of depends where you are. And there will never, it won't be a bubble where it's just going to bust. Something has to happen, like high inflation, that's going to make the market cool off. And I kind of predict at the rate we're going and spending money, unfortunately, I think we're going to hit an inflation.
I do too. I've been watching the M3 currency production. It's been on a steady ascent, but then all of a sudden last year it went through the roof, straight up off the charts. Now this is a guesstimate on the M3 ultimately, because the Feds no longer release the M3 data directly, but it's an estimate. But I mean, just at the rate they're printing currency, I think the last stat I read was February was at 1.37 or 47% inflation rate.
It's crazy. They should not be doing this. I mean, they have a checklist of things they want to do. They don't care. I don't understand politicians that don't understand. I mean, these guys should understand that when you borrow all this money, that it either gets paid back or at least you got to pay the interest on it. And their solution, I guess, is, well, let's just print more money. But once you flood the market with so much money and everybody's got too much money, all of a sudden what happens is prices start to raise because you have a boatload of money, right? And so, then you go upside down. You're too young to remember this, but in, 70, I just started working, 78 or 79, we had interest rates up to 18%.
Wow.
Because inflation was 18%. It was nuts. And then I think it was Reagan who came in. It was during Carter. And then Reagan came in and things started to cool down. He stopped spending so much money and things got back to a little bit normal. So right now is a great time to own a house, buy a house, refinance your house. I think rates will change, maybe not next year, but the year after. And so my recommendation to people is, if you have a house, stick with it, get a long-term, loan on it, get that 2 or 3% rate, because I'm shocked it's been around this long.
And that's a good point, because back in 2008, one of the big problems amongst many, because you had the credit default swaps and that's kind of what allowed them to short the situation. But you had the collateralized debt obligations, the CDOs, synthetic CDOs, and the other half of the coin was the interest rates, because people had variable interest rates,
right? And
they shot through the roof and they could no longer afford their mortgage payment. So I think that's a really good point, to get locked in. If
you, at 2.5%, you're not going to see this again. I don't think it's ever going to go below. And if you can lock in on a 15-year, depending on where you are in life, a 15 or a 30-year loan that, depending how long you want to live there, and then look for the right opportunity to sell. But at this point, this is unbelievable, these rates. And particularly with prices going up, there'll be the ups and downs in real estate, as in all businesses, there's the ups and downs. But if you can lock in a 2 or 2.5 or 3% rate, lock it in.
Definitely. And be smart about it. Get Cocoon. Get Cocoon, maximize your cash flow. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, no, seriously.
Any extra cash flow can drastically change your situation.
Hey, I'm coming to Iowa. This is going to be my first time. I'm coming to Iowa, and I tried to get a booth. Maybe you can help me. He didn't ever return my call. He probably knew I wasn't a trucker. I tried to get a booth at the Iowa event. I am super excited about coming. I already told my wife. She said, I don't know if I want to go. I said, doesn't matter to me. I'm going. And there's that big event on the I-80.
It's the Iowa 80 truck stop. And I forget the little small town it's in. It's kind of just flat farm fields like all around.
Yeah, I'm coming.
But then there's this mega truck stop.
I'm super up for this. It's in July sometime, like July 11th or something. And I've tried to get a hold of the guy. Maybe you can help me out. I want to get a little booth there so that I could, show what we're doing. I'm building some new features. One of the features I can tell you, I don't know if we'll get accepted, is in search. And I would be one of the first in search to be able to pay you for your searches. I can't use Google because they're not going to pay me, but Yahoo will. And so I can make you guys money on searches as well. And I think it's based on, what advertisers you look at and so on. And happy to pay. And we're going to do it as a dividend. So everybody that's in the program just gets a piece of, you guys get 70 or 80%. We'll take our cut and we'll just split it up among all of us.
That would be awesome.
And if we get big fast, we'll be able to sell that data over and over again. Then
You've been listening to the Brittany Richardson Experience.